The Mind Games, when a psychologist becomes the patient. Dark twists await. Dr. Jonathan Reed's office, nestled in the heart of the city, was a sanctuary of calm. The walls, adorned with degrees and accolades, radiated a sense of accomplishment and security. A bookshelf overflowing with psychological journals and classic literature occupied one corner, while a meticulously organized desk stood as a testament to Reed's disciplined nature. Everything in the room reflected order, control, and mastery. Yet as Dr. Reed sat in his leather chair, waiting for his next patient, a gnawing unease began to creep into his mind. The referral had come from an esteemed colleague, accompanied by a cryptic note: Adrian Blackwood. A challenging case, but nothing beyond your expertise. Reed's curiosity was piqued, though he had encountered many difficult cases throughout his career. However, there was something about the way the note was worded that unsettled him. The door creaked open, and Adrian Blackwood stepped inside. He was tall, with sharp features and an air of confidence that bordered on arrogance. His eyes, a piercing shade of blue, seemed to bore into Reed's soul, as though searching for something hidden beneath the surface. "Dr. Reed," Adrian began, his voice smooth and measured, "I've heard a lot about you." Reed nodded, gesturing for Adrian to take a seat. "And I've been briefed on your case, Mr. Blackwood. How can I assist you today?" A faint smile tugged at the corners of Adrian's lips as he settled into the chair across from Reed. "I think it's more a question of how I can assist you, Doctor." Reed raised an eyebrow, intrigued yet cautious. "Assist me? In what way?" Adrian leaned forward, his gaze never leaving Reed's. "I know things, Doctor. Things about you, your life, your family." A chill ran down Reed's spine, though he masked it with a practiced smile. "I'm sure you've done your research, Mr. Blackwood. It's not uncommon for patients to look up their therapists." Adrian chuckled softly, a sound that sent shivers through the room. "Oh, this isn't about research. It's about knowledge. For instance, your daughter, Emma, she's struggling in school, isn't she? Math, if I'm not mistaken." The blood drained from Reed's face. He had confided in no one about Emma's academic difficulties. "How do you know that?" Adrian shrugged, as if the question were irrelevant. "I know many things, Doctor, more than you'd like to believe." Reed felt his composure slipping, but quickly regained control. "I'm here to help you, Mr. Blackwood. Not the other way around. Perhaps we should focus on why you're here." Adrian leaned back, a satisfied expression on his face. "We'll get to that in due time. But first, let's talk about the nightmares you've been having. The ones where you wake up in a cold sweat, your heart racing." Reed's heart pounded in his chest, though he kept his face neutral. He had told no one about the nightmares, vivid, terrifying dreams that left him shaken each morning. "This session is about you, not me," he replied, his voice betraying none of the fear that now gripped him. Adrian's smile widened, his eyes glinting with a predatory gleam. "Of course, Doctor. We'll discuss me soon enough. But remember, I know you better than you know yourself." The session continued, with Adrian dropping more unsettling truths about Reed's life, each revelation chipping away at the doctor's calm exterior. By the time Adrian left, Reed was a bundle of nerves, his mind racing with questions and fears he could not shake. For the first time in his career, Dr. Jonathan Reed found himself dreading the next appointment. Dr. Reed's obsession with Adrian Blackwood began as a small ember, a flicker of unease that he believed he could easily extinguish. Yet, over the next few days, that ember grew into a raging inferno, consuming his thoughts, his time, and his sanity. He spent hours in his office, poring over old files and medical records, trying to find any clue, any logical explanation for how Adrian knew so much. His mind, once a fortress of rationality, now felt like a maze, twisting and turning with no clear path to escape. His wife, Emily, noticed the change almost immediately. She would catch him staring off into space, his eyes hollow and distant, or find him awake at odd hours of the night, his face illuminated by the harsh light of his computer screen. When she asked him what was wrong, he would simply shake his head, offering weak reassurances that everything was fine. But Emily knew better. She could see the cracks forming in the man she had loved for so many years, and it terrified her. Dr. Reed's paranoia deepened with each passing day. He began to see Adrian everywhere, in the shadows of his home, in the faces of strangers on the street, even in his own reflection. The once familiar and comforting spaces of his life now felt suffocating, as if the walls were closing in on him, trapping him in a nightmare from which he could not wake. During their sessions, Adrian's control over Reed became more evident. The patient no longer seemed like a man seeking help, but rather a puppeteer, pulling the strings of Reed's unraveling mind. Adrian would sit calmly, his gaze never wavering, as he recounted events from Reed's life with eerie accuracy, things that no one could possibly know, not even Reed himself. "You've been searching for answers, haven't you, doctor?" Adrian asked during one session, his tone almost mocking. Reed's hands trembled as he gripped the arms of his chair, his once steady demeanor now a distant memory. How do you know all this? Who are you?" Adrian's smile was cold, devoid of any warmth. "I told you before, doctor. I know you better than you know yourself. But the real question is, do you know who you are?" The words hit Reed like a physical blow. He felt the room spinning, the walls closing in around him as memories, long buried, began to surface. He saw flashes of his childhood, fragments of moments that didn't quite make sense, like pieces of a puzzle that refused to fit together. And then he saw it, the image that had haunted his nightmares, now crystal clear in his mind. A young boy, his own reflection in a mirror, and another child standing behind him, a look of accusation in his eyes. The truth crashed down on Reed like a tidal wave. He remembered the accident, how he had been playing with his friend Adrian near the lake, how they had argued, and how he had pushed Adrian in a fit of childish anger. He remembered the sound of the splash, the frantic moments that followed, and the deafening silence when Adrian's body had stopped thrashing in the water. He had blocked it out, buried it deep within his subconscious, convinced himself that it had never happened. But now, the past had clawed its way to the surface, refusing to be ignored any longer. You're not real," Reed whispered, his voice shaking with fear. "You're just a figment of my imagination, a manifestation of my guilt." Adrian leaned forward, his expression unreadable. "Am I, doctor? Or am I something more? Something you created, perhaps? Something that has a life of its own?" Reed's mind reeled, struggling to separate reality from the nightmare that had become his existence. Was Adrian simply a projection of his guilt, a psychological ghost born from his unresolved trauma? Or was he something far more sinister, something that had taken on a life of its own? In a desperate attempt to regain control, Reed lashed out, knocking over the small table between them. "Get out! Get out of my mind! You're not real!" But Adrian remained calm, unfazed by Reed's outburst. "You can't escape me, doctor. I'm a part of you. I always have been, and I always will be." Reed's breathing was ragged, his vision blurred by tears he hadn't realized were falling. He knew, deep down, that Adrian was right. The guilt he had tried so hard to suppress had finally consumed him, manifesting in the form of the boy he had unwittingly killed so many years ago. And now, there was no escape. The next thing Reed knew, he was on the floor, his body shaking uncontrollably as he wept. Adrian's presence was gone, but the damage was done. Reed had lost his grip on reality, his mind shattered by the weight of his own guilt. Days later, Reed's colleagues found him in his office, disheveled and muttering incoherently to himself. He was admitted to a psychiatric facility where the staff worked tirelessly to piece together the fragments of his broken mind. But even as he began to recover, the shadow of Adrian Blackwood loomed large in his thoughts, a constant reminder of the past he could never escape. Reed spent his days in a fog, the line between reality and fantasy blurred beyond recognition. He would often sit by the window, staring out at the world with vacant eyes, lost in the labyrinth of his own mind. And sometimes, just sometimes, he would catch a glimpse of his reflection in the glass, a reflection that wasn't quite his own. A figure would stand behind him, just out of focus, watching him with a cold, knowing smile. The doctors told him it was all in his head, that he was on the road to recovery, but Reed knew the truth. Adrian would always be there, lurking in the shadows of his mind, a ghost that could never be laid to rest. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, Reed came to a grim acceptance of his fate. He understood now that there was no escape from the past, no matter how deeply it was buried. And so, he resigned himself to his new reality, living each day in the haunting company of the boy he had once known, the boy who had come back to claim his mind. The story ends with Reed, now a shell of the man he once was, sitting in his room at the psychiatric facility. He stares into the mirror, his reflection staring back at him, but it's not his own face he sees. It's Adrian's, smiling with a cold, knowing glint in his eyes, as if to say, "I'm still here, doctor, and I always will be." The story serves as a powerful reminder of the dangers of unresolved guilt and the importance of confronting one's past. The twist at the end challenges readers to consider the possibility that the demons we create in our minds can take on a life of their own, haunting us in ways we can never fully escape. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing short story. See you in the next one.